Hey, welcome to our podcast, Live Him Out, where our goal is to educate and motivate people how to live Him out in their daily lives. Today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Pastor Brian and asking him how he overcame depression. So, welcome to our podcast. Hey, thanks for joining us. I would like to ask you to go ahead and like, subscribe, share this podcast to whoever you know that may need it. I'm so excited that you're here to join us for this interview type podcast. So just the other day, I was in my office and I had asked my dad to come in and talk about a topic that we're going to be addressing in the youth. We're doing a series called Out of My Feels rather than In My Feels, learning how to get out of our emotions controlling us. And the topic that we were going to talk about was depression. So I began talking with him, and while we were in there, I had known that he had walked through depression in his life, and I was asking him what were the spiritual root causes that got him there, and then what got him out of there. And it really began a really great discussion that we got to have. And so we were like, we ought to make this a podcast.
Yeah.
And so here we are a little bit time later.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So the question is, when in your life have you been depressed? What got you there? And then what got you out of that mindset?
Yeah. So I've got a couple different periods of my life. One of them lasted a lot longer than the other, and I'll start with that one. It was toward my beginning of my college years. Mm-hmm. So I finished high school. I'm a new Christian, and I'm trying to learn and grow in this thing called faith. And I'm going to school, and I'm burning the candle at both ends. You know, I'm going to school full load. I'm working full hours. I'm running, trying to stay out late and do everything.
Yeah.
So I reached this place where I wasn't physically doing well. I was physically depleted. I also went through a period where during this same time, I was new into the faith, and I was putting so much on myself about what I needed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I had this in what I didn't realize was a too big a list of what I was responsible for. I was trying to do it all myself to make myself a Christian. I was trying to do everything necessary. Yeah. I'm kind of new into ministry as well, so I'm feeling the pressure. I've got to always have answers. I got to make sure I read my Bible enough. I've got to be righteous. I've got to somehow break every sin pattern, thought process I've ever had in my life, and so the pressure's all on.
Absolutely.
And so I reached this place where all of a sudden I just didn't have anything else left in me. I was I was physically depleted. Mm-hmm. I found myself emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually depleted. I didn't have answers because I wasn't living my life out of what was overflowing. I was trying to fill it up with stuff. I was trying to make it all happen on my own.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was completely depleted in every one of those areas. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I found myself in this place of where I couldn't think clearly. Mm-hmm. There was no more purpose, joy, life, emotions out of balance, sick a lot. And I found myself in this long, dark place. Mm-hmm. And it often then included panic attacks and a variety of other things. But it was because I got to this place of just complete depletion.
Yeah.
And it was miserable. It was a miserable place to be, because when you don't have anything in you, then you don't have anything in you to get out of what you're in.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a fog over your eyes.
It was.
No light at the end of the tunnel. You've just absolutely burnt yourself out, totally spent, all of that stuff.
Yep. I couldn't get my feelings straight. It was foggy. It was confusing. Mm-hmm. It was like there was nothing out in front. My mind, I couldn't get my thoughts square. They all went negative and went sideways. Yeah. I remember feeling like I was just in this cycle of just despair, really. Yeah. I remember in my mind, it just felt like I was swirling downward and just at times just screaming because I couldn't I couldn't get out of that spot.
Yeah. So did that happen just like all of a sudden, like one day you woke up and it's that way and you just find it where you're like, wow, I am like spent? Or is this like you can feel yourself getting there and getting there and getting there? And
Yeah. Both. Because it wasn't until after it kind of hit a wall one day that it was all of a sudden like, almost, this sounds strange, it almost felt like something broke within inside me. Like, okay, in fact, I remember saying, what would it be like if I was losing my mind? That's what I had this panic inside, like something was wrong in my brain.
Wow.
And so, yes, there was this moment where it just felt like, chink, something broke. But then I remember afterwards looking back, thinking, okay, this was before that, and this was before that. So there were indicators leading up, but there was this moment for me, at least. It's different for everybody, I recognize, but there's this moment where it felt like, all right, I thought I was kind of managing life and managing even faith, and but I was trying to do it all. I was trying to bear it all, and it led to a place of complete depletion. And it was terrible. It was dark. It was long, and I didn't have answers for it. I didn't know what I was doing. At the time, my parents didn't understand it. No one understood what I was going through. So I found help, however, in my pastor, who would become my father-in-law, who helped me walk through that time. He had experienced that. So just knowing that I wasn't alone.
Yeah. And that you weren't broken.
That there wasn't something wrong with me. That was incredibly helpful. So his listening ear, his encouragement along the way helped. And then to get to a place where I began to fill in the places I was depleted, to get some physical rest, to pull away. And that was necessary physically, mentally, emotionally, but it began to be true spiritually. And I didn't quite understand what all that meant.
Yeah.
It would actually be a long time, in fact, years before I would understand how that component was really the root of it. I realized I was a perfectionist. I realized I was being legalistic. I had all these checklists of things I thought I had to do to try to have God's favor, and I was trying to do it all in my own strength. And in so doing, I absolutely spiritually wore myself out. And so as I began to recognize, okay, wait a minute, I have forgiveness in Jesus Christ. I am accepted in Jesus Christ completely, not just up to this moment, but eternally. And that I am free. He calls me redeemed. He calls me righteous. I'm not it's not a status I have to attain.
No. Exactly.
Holiness is not something I have to functionally get to on my own. But that's what I thought. That's what I believed. And so my belief got me to this place, combined with, physicals. I was totally depleted in all those areas. So that's when it first happened for me. Again, out of high school into college, in those early years of my faith, and I go into ministry in those early years as well. That's when it happens, and I wrestled with it, even seasonally for a while, for many years. And then the panic attacks and so forth. It was when the truth of who I am in Christ and who He is in me. That's when it began to change for me. So, but I also know that is a tendency, I guess, a weakness that I can lean into if I'm not careful. So now 2 years ago, I have COVID, and it's a difficult case for me. 8 weeks fever, and I'm down, and the longer it goes on, the less strength I have, and you're not eating well during that, and you sit on the couch and lay in the bed, and all of a sudden the clouds start rolling in again.
Exactly. Because you're physically getting super tired and spent.
I didn't have the strength to want to get up out of bed, not just want to, but even I couldn't get up. So I'm physically depleted. mentally and emotionally, here I go again, and then spiritually as well. And so there were days I couldn't pray. I just cried, and I remember asking Heather to pray for me and to be encouragement to me. And family would come over, and having them there was encouraging. Knowing they were praying, seeing their faces, and them taking the risk, often even coming in the room. When I had COVID, they were coming in. Eventually getting to the doctor and getting some medication, but it was really people praying and then getting spiritual encouragement from people.
Yeah.
As I began to turn the corner physically, there were people who began to come over and would speak to me and speak truth and speak hope and speak encouragement, and then get to see the kids and the grandkids and start seeing some little successes along the way. That helped, but it was a dark place as well in every respect, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. You can go check out one of our messages where Heather and I do a message of when I had COVID, and it goes into that more in detail. One of the things, though, that I remembered from my early years of struggling with depression is when my pastor, Nick Harris, showed me a passage in the Bible where there were people who actually struggle with this. I thought, okay, this is really helpful. It's not just me and him, but there's other people. In fact, there's people in the Bible,
that God used.
God used in mighty ways, and they went on and became were significantly used by him. So one of those stories, though, was by a man named Elijah. There would later be Elisha, but Elijah in 1 Kings 19. You back up to 18, and God's using him in powerful ways. I mean, he's the guy that's going up against the false prophets.
Yeah.
He's the guy he's got a showdown on the mountain one day, and they're going to build an altar, and he's going to build an altar, and they're going to both cry out to their gods and see whose God answers, and they do, and it lasts all day, and their God doesn't.
Yeah.
Elijah prays, God licks up the sacrifice and consumes theirs as well. And it's a huge victory, this powerful, emotional, mental, spiritual victory of
the mountaintop of mountaintops.
Exactly.
My God proved himself faithful yet again, like all the greatest things.
Yeah. And he has this incredible moment, but at the end of it, he's spent, And so you start looking in 1 Kings 19. I don't want to misquote any of it. So I want to read some of what it says there. Yeah. So it's after that the king and the queen who are in place, they're wicked leaders, governmental leaders. And it says that Ahab the king told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. So word gets to the governmental leaders, and also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. So again, huge spiritual battle for Elijah. Then Jezebel, she's the queen, sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So let the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life as the life of those, as one of them by tomorrow about this time." In other words, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you. And you'd think, okay, Elijah, you've taken on all the prophets.
Taken like 400 prophets or whatever.
Yeah, and God showed himself faithful. Here's one woman, one statement. She's the queen. She's powerful. She makes one statement. And it says in verse 3, "And when he saw that, he arose, ran for his life, went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die, and said, 'It's enough. Now, Lord, take my life. I'm no better than my father's.'" That dude.
After the greatest victory there ever could be, just about.
Yep. He sinks. He gets one word, one threat, and he says, "I'm out of here." And he leaves his servant. He goes alone, and he sits down, and he says, "God, it'd be better for me just to end my life right here. Let's just end it right here. Let's just take it. I can't do this." And I think, man, that's the story. I can relate to all of that so well, because one moment you feel like, all right, I'm riding this wave, and then the next moment it's gone. Yeah. And there's nothing. And so I see it. You go back and read the story and you realize, Elijah, you just you exhausted yourself. You're spiritually, mentally, emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
And when you have nothing inside, you get to a place of depression. Your emotions are depressed.
Yeah.
Your mental capacity is depressed. Your spirit is depressed. And then so your thoughts go sideways, your emotions are out of control, your spirit is empty, and that's where he was. And I found myself there. What's interesting is what happens next. And I think you have in this story a great description and prescription for what we should do. And this is what became helpful to me. In verse 5, it says, "And then as he lay and slept under a broom tree," he slept, he rested. He physically knew, I'm exhausted, I need to sleep. And sleep was necessary. And it says, "Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, 'Arise and eat.' Then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again." He ate,
There you go.
he drank, he slept. He was exhausted. He needed to get his physical body back to being full. He needed to get past the depletion of that. So you see that whole cycle. Then it says, verse 7, that the angel of the Lord came back the second time, touched him, and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." We've got somewhere to go, Elijah. There's a purpose for your life. That's helpful.
Yes.
Knowing there's a tomorrow.
Yep.
There's something God has for you. There's something beyond this moment. That was helpful for me. So he does that. He arose and he ate and he drank, and he went in the strength of the food for 40 days and 40 nights. As far as Horeb, the mountain of God. So he travels, he goes on this journey, but he's eating and he's drinking and he's going to God. That was hard for me at times.
Yeah.
Like I'm having questions about why this is even happening to me, and I'm struggling in my faith, and now you're telling me I need to go to God. Yeah. Because he has the help. You got depleted because you tried to do it in your own strength and just because of what you went through, but return to him.
Yeah.
The story goes on, says he went in a cave and he spent the night, so he slept again. And then it's here this very interesting thing happens. It says that the Lord came to him. God meets with him. And it was here that, if you're familiar with the story, that God says to him, "I want you to go out on the mountain and I want you to stand there." And this is the moment when God, it says that he passed by and there was a great strong wind and it broke the rocks into pieces, and the Lord was not in the wind. He wasn't in the big moment. But after that, there was an earthquake, and the Lord was not in the earthquake. But after that, there was a fire, and the Lord was all of a sudden not in that either, but it came in what followed. And it says he came in a still, small voice. So Elijah had to get to this place where he heard God speak to him. Very private, very personal, very real. And this is where Elijah's spiritual healing began. And he begins this conversation with God, and God tells him, "You're not alone. There are other prophets out there. In fact, I'm going to send you to them. And then I'm going to call you to go choose one. And I want you to pour your heart out and your life to him." And this is where he chooses Elisha to be the one that he'll pour his life into. And so out of all of that, Elijah finds the healing he needed. And it paralleled so much with what I needed to do, because obviously Scripture gives us the pattern for that. I needed some physical replacement. The first phase of my life when this happened, I even took some medication to help me. And I know that can help at times. My goal was to not rely upon that long term. The second time, I didn't rely upon medication, but I had other sources that helped, of course. Like I said, surrounding myself with people that love me, resting, eating well, and then having people pray for me when I can't pray, and then speak truth and encouragement to me when I can't speak it to myself. And all of that helped me in the process to get out of the dark, out of the fog, out of all the uncertainty, out of all the fears that came with all of that. So those are two events from my life where that became helpful.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So these are questions I would assume
Yeah.
most people have who either are depressed, know someone who's going through depression, or they have walked through depression.
Yeah.
I think these questions and answers will be beneficial to them. So we've kind of addressed this already, but I think just to ask the obvious, can Christians be depressed?
Yeah, well, the answer is yes. Obviously, yes. People can today. People did in Scripture. There are dark days. There are dark times. The thing that I think we find, though, is that we might walk into the valley of the shadow of death, but we don't stay in it. God's not looking to leave us there. We might find ourselves there for a variety of reasons, but the thing the enemy wants to use in that moment is to make you think, this is never going to get any better. You're never going to get out of this. This is the way it's always going to be.
Yeah.
And that, I just remember the feelings of that and the sound of that. And that's what kept me there longer.
Exactly.
The more I believe that. So,
sure.
yes,
The
Christians,
agreements you were making in
it's
all
true.
those scenarios.
It's true. And it just, when you're down in it, you don't lack, or you lack the strength to fight.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I became incredibly dependent upon others to help me.
Because whenever you're exhausted, it's not like you can just jump right back up and get to battle and go fighting and all that stuff. But
if you were to run a half marathon, at the end of it, your body is going to be depleted.
Exactly.
You're going to want to sit down and relax, and rest.
For sure.
And eat at the end of that.
For sure.
It's not the time where someone say, "Get up, come on, let's run another race." Well, no, I can't. I need to recover.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that again, that can happen in the emotional exhaustion, in mental exhaustion, in physical exhaustion as well,
and spiritual.
I was gonna say, I think that's the dagger. It seems to be almost is whenever that exhaustion starts happening and racing thoughts in your spirit.
Yeah.
And questioning your standing with God and doubting everything you believe and kind of just taking this really like outside of life look at your life kind of thing.
It's a good description.
Yeah.
That is kind of the feeling. You just feel like you're all of a sudden you've zoomed out on yourself and you look down and it's hopeless. There's no good thing going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we say, yes, Christians can be depressed. Then the other question is that, is depression a sin? Is it a sin to be depressed as a Christian?
It is not. It is not a sin. I would say it's not something we want to have to stay in. No one does. It's more of a recognition of depletion. And so I think the goal then is to find out what areas am I depleted?
Yeah.
And then let me take the steps to get some health in those areas. If it's in some things I've believed or am believing or experiencing or going through, get help in those moments. Find a friend, family member who can speak hope to you and life to you in that moment when you can't.
For sure, yeah. And I think just to tag in with this, is depression a sin? I don't think depression is a sin. Now, I do believe that sin can drive you to depression, though.
That's true.
I think
that's true.
The person that is sinning, that is living a life actively in that, while proclaiming Christ as well as their Savior, and then begins the path of trying to hide their sin, I think that is just... you are running right into exhaustion there. You're trying to be two people whenever you are meant to be one person, and you are going to exhaust yourself.
That's true. If you're that, or if you're trying to be perfect, you will spiritually exhaust yourself.
Yes.
If you're trying to please the crowd, you will spiritually exhaust yourself. If you're trying to keep up with some religious performance, you will exhaust yourself.
Yeah.
So you're right.
You will see yourself depressed because of all of those mindsets or those agreements that you've made.
Yeah. It maybe a car is a good illustration. Is it a sin to run out of gas? No, it's not.
No.
But I don't know what got you there. You know, that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Is think a little bit about what got you there, but mostly get your tank filled again. You know, go to the source that you need. If If you need some emotional healing, get some emotional healing. If you need some mental, get some healing. If you need physical, if you need spiritual, get to the source where there can be healing.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So another question, and this is a good and intense one.
Yeah.
Is depression a spirit that can possess you?
Good question. So, I'm going to say yes and no.
Okay.
Because it can just be a depletion or exhaustion, as we talked about already. But you get in the New Testament a reference to a spirit of infirmity. So there is this spirit of sickness or sickliness that can happen in your life where, because of agreements you've made and wrong belief, you stay in a weakened position and your spirit is sickly. Well, if that's the case, if you're not vibrant and strong and courageous and confident and secure in your faith, but instead are worrisome, fearsome, insecure, uncertain.
Yeah. It goes back to the dis-ease.
Yes, exactly. You put yourself in a vulnerable state to physical dis-ease, but also emotional dis-ease, which is depression. And so that's why I say yes and no. It can be just a result of exhaustion, but it can also be a spirit that some people have about them, an attitude, a thought process, a belief pattern of sickliness.
Yeah, for sure.
And that leads to more sickliness.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to also, like in this Pray Bold series you've been preaching of, you can make agreements, and then there's a further down the line change. The longer you stay in the agreements and the more you make the actions, the habits, then there's a soul tie, and then it truly takes over your life. It is your identity. It has become a part of you. The depression has, if it stays around long enough. And I think that's something that can overwhelm your spirit.
Yeah, and then that's a stronghold at that point. You just feel like not just feel like, but you can't get out of it.
I can't get out of this on my own strength.
You're stuck.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good question.
So then, if it's a spirit that can possess you, is it something that can be, should be cast out? That's an interesting question, because we see stories of demons and spirits being casted out of people in the Bible. But is this a scenario, a spirit that can and should be cast out of someone?
I don't think there's a blanket answer for this, because every case is unique. Again, it could be exhaustion, could be a spirit of sorrow, sadness, whatever.
Like if a family member died or something like that, a person could go into depression.
There's natural grieving that happens. It could lead to depression. I guess it depends on the situation, but I would say if there are long-term, ongoing, repetitive patterns of depression, it might be something worth looking at. If agreements are made, like you pointed out, agreements are made, strongholds are formed. There might be some spiritual fighting that needs to happen on your behalf. Some counseling so.
I was going to say, in that, it's not like you're just going to walk up to a depressed person and be like,
No,
you're the worst.
That's why it's important to seek counsel, but seek counsel that is biblically based and spiritually sensitive. To know what has what has transpired in your life, and have you made some agreements? Have you aligned yourself? Have you fallen into some strongholds where some prayer needs to happen, that you pray and someone else prays on your behalf?
For sure.
Good question.
And I think another thing in this is that we know the verse that says, the truth shall set you free.
Yeah.
Someone who is depressed is not operating in their mindset and their spirit from a place of truth. They are in that exhausted, I still have to, I can't measure up, I'm not enough. If it's a Christian who's in these things and they're saying all of those things of trying to prove themselves holy or whatever it may be, then that's where truth needs to come in and say, hey, we're going to have to shift this. We're going to have to free you from this with truth.
In Galatians 6, where it talks about if there's a brother who is overtaken, then you who are spiritual should restore such a one in a spirit of meekness. And that you need that, when you're the one who you can't formulate the right thoughts and you can't see past the fog. I've needed people to come into my life
and restore you.
I did not get out of depression on my own.
Yeah.
I got out with the help of others.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the story in the Gospels where the four friends took the man to Jesus who was in the house, and they removed the roof of the house because it was so crowded, and they lowered him down into the house.
Yes.
And Jesus even said, it's the faith of your friends that is allowing there to be healing today. And so I know that to be true for me.
Yeah.
Again, I can confidently say I did not get out of depression on my own.
Yeah.
I got out because I had other people in my life that were willing to love me and speak truth in those moments.
Sure. So let me ask you this question then. Whenever you were going through times of depression, did you ever have people come up to you and say, hey, just choose joy, just be happy, have a positive mindset or whatever? And then if you had that happen, what's the reaction? Why is that the worst thing to say to someone in that situation?
Yeah. Well-meaning people do those things.
Yes,
they say that
absolutely.
stuff.
They're not saying that to try to drive a dagger in your heart.
And if you've never walked through that, you don't understand the scope of it. And so it's a thing that you would say if you had never been through it. Oh, you should change the way you think and be happy.
It's not just a sadness.
It's something more than that. It's much deeper than that at the core of who a person is. And so if it was that simple, then no one would ever be depressed. You're just like, well, I'll just put on a happy little show and watch it, or read a joke online and I'll be happy again. It doesn't work that way. And so well-meaning people do that.
Yes.
It often falls flat and it often
can create more harm.
It can. I hate to say it that way, but it's true, because then if you're already in this depressed state and you're already feeling bad that you can't get out of it, all you need is someone to tell you another little simple statement that you should be able to do, and you can't do it, and you're just like, okay, well, thanks for lowering me down the elevator two more floors.
Exactly. So, and it's like, again, the example of like a runner. If a person just finished a 10K.
Yeah, and they fall down the ground.
Yeah, exactly. They're, just 9K in, and then the person just says, well, hey, just get up and run the last 1K.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if I could, I would, but I can't.
I can't.
I'm exhausted.
That's right.
And I think that's the mindset shift to take for the person. If you know someone who is depressed and you may be trying to counsel them, you may be trying to help them. It may be a son or daughter. It may be an uncle or aunt. I don't know what it is. Maybe a spouse. The thing to not say is, hey, maybe just be happy today. Maybe just choose joy. But instead, come alongside them and understand the exhaustion they're in and help them to find rest. Bring them to Jesus, like the analogy of the four people.
It's good.
It's great. So here's another question for you. What did the use of external resources or medication do for you whenever you're trying to cure this inward problem we know is a spiritual problem of exhaustion?
Yeah. So again, in college years, I did have a doctor prescribe some medication to me. It was designed to help me not be depressed, think more clearly, and I like to say that was the thing that turned it all around for me, but it really wasn't. It helped a little, I think, in the process. It gave me some sense of, all right, I can get through this. I'm going to take these. I'm going to feel better. And then in time, there was some more clarity in my thinking, but I never wanted to let that become the way I lived. So I was always looking to reduce the dose, which I would say to anybody, don't just make that dramatic change on your own terms. If you are taking those now, please consult with your doctor before you make any changes to your medication, because those kind of jumps and leaps can be detrimental.
Yes.
So, but my efforts not only included medicine, but some other avenues as well. I was looking to find faith to be the thing that pulled me forward in counseling and truth. So They're external sources. You might say they're medicine, but they're also food, eating properly, not just a bunch of junk food like college kids eat sometimes, at least I did.
Yep.
But then putting yourself in healthy environments too, where there are people who are life givers to you. You can be honest with, and they speak to you. Sometimes I remember when I was depressed, I'd get around other people, but I didn't want them to know what I was going through, so I hid it more. Well, guess what that does? It just makes you more exhausted.
Yep, exactly.
So I'd feel worse being around people because I wasn't being honest about what was going on within me. I was creating the scenario, making it worse. So, outward sources, medicine may be an option. I would hope that wouldn't be the only option. There's a spiritual source of most dis-ease, and I wanted to know what that was. And I feel like God has revealed much of that, and I know to go back to that for my source at times.
Yeah. So then, if exhaustion is the spiritual root there, spiritual exhaustion is what causes depression. What then, personally, for you, brought you rest in your spirit and brought you out of depression?
Yeah. For me, what exhausted me was perfectionism, legalism, and trying to keep a standard in front of other people. I was wearing myself out while struggling behind the scenes. And so when I reached a point of where that wasn't working anymore, and then I picked up a book. Right now, the book is still out. It's called Grace That Breaks the Chains. When it first came out, it was called Breaking the Bondage of Legalism. And I picked it up because I thought I knew some people who were legalists and I wanted to help them. And the more I read, the more I realized this is talking to me. I had built my identity on keeping the laws and rules and not on the righteousness and grace that had been given to me, and understanding I had been set free.
Yeah.
So when all the verses that deal with like Romans 8:1, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Okay, this became life-giving all of a sudden. Like, okay, wait a minute. There is no more anger from God toward me, and shame giving toward me, and condemnation, rejection. And that's because of what Christ did for me. And it happened that when I believed him, that was so fundamentally shifting for me that it became healing. It's like, okay, now my spirit it filled up. Their life came in, and to see that I was as accepted in the throne room of God as Jesus was, that was life-giving to me.
Not because of what you did.
Not because of anything I'd done, but just simply by his grace and faith to receive that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that was life-giving for me.
Yeah.
And that filled me up.
Yes.
That took away the exhaustion. At the source of all my exhaustion were those two things being depleted.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you retrain your brain and the thinking patterns that you had gotten yourself in? Because that seems to be the thing that exhausted you, was that same, I need to think this way. I need to do this thing. I have to be this way. All those things. How did you retrain your brain to not say, I need to do these old patterns, but I need to make new patterns?
Right. It was through memorizing and meditating on Scripture. Again, that Romans 8:1, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. That became powerful to me. I carried around a little card, and I'd pull it out, look at it, memorize it, meditate on it, and I would just go word by word through it and pray through it. Even this 2 years ago with COVID, especially at night, I did what I did back in college. I pulled out another set of note cards and I started writing verses on them. And I'd prop them up next to my bed, or I could see them when I laid my head down. And I'd go to sleep looking at those verses and meditate on those and memorize and just plow through them and ask God to speak and show me truth out of them. That brought me out again.
That's awesome.
That was my source. Truth really set me free again. truth that came from his heart, truth that filled me back up, that reminded me who I was and who he is and his plans for me, all of that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways acknowledge him. He will make your path straight. All of those verses just came back to me, and new ones became important to me in that process.
Yeah. All right. So, 2 other questions for you to finish this out. What would you say to someone? What would you say to someone who's trying to counsel someone through depression? What's the encouragement? You say, this is what you should say to them, or this is what they need.
Yeah.
The person who has to, whatever, counsel the person who's in depression.
Yeah, great question. I would try to have as much understanding as you can of their situation, and if you're going to ask questions and try to understand what have they gone through that has led to this complete exhaustion, the depletion for them. Find out what it is. Has there been a loss? Has there been a way of thinking? Has there been abuse? Has there been legalism, perfectionism, religious abuse? Whatever it is, find what that is. You're not trying to analyze. I'm not looking for that, but seek to understand what has led them to this place. Lots of listening, and then I'd say second, lots of affirming. God is with you.
Yes. God
is for you. He loves you, and you will get past this day. Those are the things that have helped me.
Yeah.
You will get past this day. This is not going to be the way it always is.
Yeah, that's good.
So if people remember that, understand, listen, encourage, speak truth as is appropriate for the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And then for the person that's watching this, if they are currently going through depression, they're in a season of depression in their life, what would you say to that person?
I don't know exactly what your situation is, but I have walked in some of the areas you've walked. I know what that darkness is like. I know what the clouds are like, the confusion, the fog, the pain, the uncertainty, the fear, the panic. I know some of that, and I've walked in it. But I also know God is good to meet you there in it, and to meet you, not to shame you, not to condemn you, but to speak to you in a still, small voice and develop a level of intimacy and closeness with you that you've never yet experienced, and lead you to places that you've never yet been at. That happened for Elijah. He went to some places he had never been, became something he'd never thought, and poured himself out for others, and especially into the one man, Elisha. So be encouraged today in the midst of the pain and the darkness. God is good. His word is true. He wants to heal you, and he has healing for you. Find someone you can talk with and you trust, someone who is spiritual, and listen to what God says through them. Pour into his word, find a verse, meditate, drink it in, and have your depletion repleted, filled up. And you'll find help and hope then.
Yeah, absolutely. That's powerful. Love it. That's great stuff.
Good. Well, thank y'all for joining us today. It's very real for me, and part of my story, my testimony, but God has shown himself faithful in it. And as is always, our goal is to lift him up, but also lift him out, even in the very real, especially in the very real and dark areas of our life. So blessings to you. Our prayer is that you will be able to walk, lifting him up and live him out.